The night begins quietly, as all true stories do. Beyond the noise of modern cities, past the hum of electric light, there lies another rhythm. Slower, deeper, older. It is the sound of the world before haste, the creak of wood, the whisper of wind through fields, the slow breathing of rivers that shaped the first healers. Tonight, we drift backward through time, through stone and sand, through rooms lit by oil and flame. We walk with those who learn to mend with hands instead of machines, who read the body like a map of the seasons, who believed that balance, not battle, was the heart of health. We will cross quiet villages of the Middle Ages where life was close and love was ordinary. We will stand in the porticos of Athens where Zeno spoke of calm and acceptance. We will rest in the marble baths of Rome and follow the river of the Nile where healing began with patience and water. Each place holds a fragment of the same truth, that the search for peace, for understanding, for the small kindness of care has always belonged to us. So let the noise of the present fade, let history breathe. This is not a story of conquest, but of quiet endurance, a history of healing. Bottom of Form. Part 1. Life and Intimacy in the Middle Ages. The Shared World. Night rests gently over the fields of medieval Europe. The last light of day fades beyond the trees and smoke begins to rise in thin, wavering ribbons from the roofs of thatched houses. The sound of the wind moves through the grass, soft and uneven, carrying with it the smell of earth and ash. The village is small, held together by habit and need. Paths of dirt wind between cottages built from mud and timber. A cart stands idle, its wheels half buried in the damp soil. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then curls again beside the doorway. The night settles not as silence, but as a slow breathing, the steady rhythm of people and animals sharing the same air. Inside these homes, life gathers close. One room holds everything: family, work, and rest. A fire burns low in a clay hearth, its smoke curling upward through a hole in the roof. The flames cast a dim orange glow, shifting over rough walls darkened by years of soot. A pot of porridge cools beside the ashes. A small bench stands near the door. The room is crowded but not chaotic. Everything has its place because everything is needed. Children sleep shoulder to shoulder on straw beds. Their breathing is light and irregular, a soft hum that fills the darkness. A mother mends a torn sleeve by the fire, threading a dull needle through fabric worn thin by work. Her hands move without hurry. The sound of each pull and knot joins the rhythm of the night. In one corner, a cow shifts in its stall. The floor beneath is packed earth, covered with straw that must be changed each morning. The smell of animals mixes with the scent of smoke, milk, and wool. To modern senses, it might seem heavy, but to those who live here, it is the smell of life, familiar, grounding, constant. There is little privacy. Walls are thin, doors rarely locked, and most roofs leave small gaps where the stars peek through. The family lives together not just by choice, but by necessity. Warmth shared through nearness, safety through company. Each movement is seen, each sound known. Even sleep feels communal, as though the whole house inhales and exhales together. Outside, the night carries on its quiet labor. The wind pushes against shutters. The mill stream murmurs through the valley. A church bell rings somewhere in the distance, not to call, not to warn, but simply to mark the hour. Time moves differently here. It does not rush forward, it circles, turning with the seasons, the harvests, the births, and the deaths. The people of the village do not speak often of love. The word itself feels too delicate for their world. Yet affection exists, woven into gestures so small they are almost invisible. A shared loaf of bread, a hand resting briefly on a shoulder, a smile caught between chores. These are the expressions of care, quiet and practical, but no less real. The church speaks often, filling the calendar with rules and days of restraint. Certain nights are forbidden, certain seasons too sacred for union. But the body has its own rhythm. Slow, patient, older than law or prayer. Desire moves quietly, like a breeze through the thatch. Unseen, unspoken, yet always present. For most, marriage is not born of love but of arrangement. Families meet, promises are made, and two lives are joined, for survival, for property, for lineage. It is a contract written in necessity, yet within that practicality, something tender sometimes grows. It might appear slowly after years of shared hardship and familiar silence. It may never be spoken, but it lives. In the way two people share a task. In the way they sit together at the end of the day. The rhythm of life in these villages leaves little room for fantasy. Each day is filled with labor. Hauling water, tending animals, gathering wood, mending roofs before the rain. The hands that hold love also hold tools, and so tenderness must find its own language. It speaks through patience, through endurance, through the quiet knowledge that companionship is as essential as food or fire. The air inside the cottages is thick and warm. The smoke from the hearth drifts lazily before finding its way out. On some nights, the fire is banked early to save fuel, and the cold creeps in around the edges of the room. Families sleep closer then, their shared heat becoming a kind of shelter. Blankets are few, but bodies remember how to make warmth from one another. Beyond the village, darkness stretches wide. The fields lie bare under the moon, and the outlines of trees stand like quiet witnesses. No lamps burn there, only the faint shimmer of frost on grass, the soft rustle of a nightbird taking flight. In that silence, the world feels immense, and human life small but steady, like a candle resisting the wind. Morning will come with smoke and crows. Before dawn, the baker will rise to stir the coals. Women will carry buckets to the well, their breath pale against the air. Men will step into the fields, boots sinking into the cold, damp earth, the same rhythm repeated endlessly, not out of monotony, but because it is what keeps the world alive. In all of this, the work, the closeness, the quiet endurance, there is a sense of balance. The people may not speak of peace, but they live within it in their own rough way. Each day ends as it begins, with the sound of fire, the whisper of animals, and the knowledge that life, however fragile, continues. Love too continues, not loud or lyrical, but steady. It exists in small exchanges, in the patience of shared survival. It does not seek beauty, it simply endures. And in a world where comfort is rare, that endurance is its own kind of devotion. From outside, the village glows faintly under the stars. Each cottage is a small lantern of warmth against the vast dark. Inside, the people sleep, their dreams mingling with the smell of smoke and wool. The fire dims to embers. The last voice fades, and still, the world holds steady. The night stretches, long and gentle, carrying with it the quiet weight of countless generations. They lived as one body, breathing, working, resting together. And though centuries have passed, the rhythm remains, the slow pulse of life shared among walls of earth and straw. Somewhere, a child turns in sleep. A mother sighs. A man adjusts the logs on the hearth. Nothing grand, nothing new, just the ordinary beauty of persistence. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The low hum of existence, the sound of people living simply, together, in the shared world of their time. Top of form, bottom of form. Quiet bonds and hidden longings. In the world of the Middle Ages, marriage is seldom a matter of choice. It is an agreement, a negotiation between families, a joining of fields, of names, of alliances. Love is not expected at the beginning, though sometimes, quietly, it finds its way in later. It grows like ivy on a stone wall, slowly, patiently, taking root where it can, reaching toward light, even in narrow spaces. Two people meet not as strangers, but as parts of a larger design. Their hands join before witnesses, their vows spoken more for lineage than affection. And yet, once the feast ends, once the guests are gone and the torches die down, they must still share a home, a single room, a single fire, a single bed. It is in that closeness that tenderness sometimes begins. Not as a spark, but as a quiet recognition. The simple understanding that in this hard world, no one survives alone. Affection shows itself in gestures small enough to miss. A loaf of bread cut and shared evenly, a sleeve mended with care, the stitching straight and deliberate, a glance that lingers just a moment too long before turning back to the day's labor. These are the ways love breathes in a life with no privacy. It does not shout, it settles. It becomes part of the rhythm of work, of waiting, of simply being near. In the evenings when the work is done and the fire hums low in its hearth, there may be a moment of stillness. A pause between words, the kind that says, "We have survived another day." The kind that needs no reply. Privacy is rare. Walls are thin and neighbors close. So intimacy learns to disguise itself. It hides behind curtains made from rough linen. It waits for the hush between footsteps. It whispers softly in the dark, when all else is quiet but the sound of breathing. Every gesture must be careful, every word must be weighed. Yet these quiet bonds are not weaker for their secrecy. They are stronger perhaps because they exist within constraint. Love becomes something resilient, folded neatly into the corners of daily life. The air smells of wool and wood, of work and warmth. The scent of the hearth clings to hair and fabric. It is not perfume, but it is familiar. The scent of someone returning home. Letters are rare, but not impossible. Among the educated, clerks, scribes, and travelers, words sometimes carry what voices cannot. Small notes folded into the hems of garments. Scraps of parchment sealed with wax and secrecy. A single line written in haste. "I think of you when the bells ring." Such words are not meant to be public. They are for the space between two souls, a private exchange in a world where everything else is shared. Love between men, between women. It lives too quietly, beneath the same roofs and within the same silences. It is written in poetry and song, hidden in allegory, carried through centuries as a murmur beneath history, two hands brushing as they pass a cup. A letter that begins formally, but ends with a phrase too tender to be mistaken. The ache of distance, the comfort of being seen. These things belong to no single kind of love. They belong to everyone. In monasteries and convents, where silence reigns and devotion fills the hours, affection still finds its path. A shared prayer. A smile exchanged when eyes meet over a candle flame. The heart, though taught to obey, often learns instead to listen quietly to itself. The human soul has always known how to love, even when forbidden the language to speak it. Outside, the world moves on with its order, kings and councils, markets and wars. But beneath that noise, life continues in smaller, humbler forms. The peasants in the fields, the craftsman at his bench, the mother weaving, the father repairing a cart. Each carries within them a quiet longing, a memory of touch, a thought of someone waiting by the fire. To live in such closeness is to know one another completely, to see every habit, every flaw, every weariness. There is no mystery left, only familiarity. And from that familiarity, sometimes a peace deeper than passion. A companionship shaped not by ideals, but by the shared act of survival. The nights are long in winter. Frost creeps through the gaps in the walls. The fire burns low, and the sound of wind against the door is steady and soft. Two figures lie side by side under wool blankets. They do not speak. They listen to the wind, to the breathing of the others in the room, to the small creaks of wood settling in the cold. Sleep comes slowly, but warmth comes sooner. From the closeness, from the simple fact of another heartbeat near. Love in this world is less about feeling and more about presence. It does not bloom suddenly, it is grown, tended, like a field that must be worked daily to bear fruit. There are no grand gestures, no confessions beneath the moon. Only the quiet rhythm of daily care, the steady returning to one another, again and again. Some marriages will never find tenderness. They remain what they were made to be, arrangements of name and duty. Yet even there, affection may grow unnoticed, like a seed taking hold in stony ground. It needs little to survive. A single kind word. A single act of mercy. In the market, voices rise and fall. Coins change hands, bread and linen pass between palms. Among the noise, someone catches another's eye. A brief glance, a small smile. Then both turn away. That too is part of the hidden life, these fleeting recognitions, these sparks that ask for nothing more than to exist. The songs sung by travelers and minstrels carry hints of these stories. They speak of distant lovers, of meetings in the fields, of hearts kept apart by distance or rule. The melodies drift from tavern to tavern, softened by wine and time. No one speaks of them openly, but everyone listens, because everyone understands. In the still hours of the evening, after the last chores are done, the village quiets again. The same fire burns, the same walls hold the same breath, and somewhere in that darkness, love continues. Not loud, not new, not easy, but steady. It may not be seen, but it shapes everything. The way one hand lingers in passing, the way someone saves the last piece of bread, the way a song lingers longer than it should. Even unspoken, it fills the air like warmth. In the end, it is not the grand loves that survive, but the small ones. The patient, practical, enduring kind. The ones that ask for nothing but presence. The ones that remain unseen, yet felt. And as the night deepens beneath roofs of straw and sky, the same quiet longing hums beneath the world. It binds the living to one another, not by vows or laws, but by the simple need to be near. The air settles. The last ember glows. Someone sighs in sleep. And in that soft exhale, history continues, not through battles or kings, but through these quiet bonds, these hidden longings that make the darkness warm. Bottom of form. Enduring warmth. In the long rhythm of the Middle Ages, life moves with the seasons. Spring brings planting, summer brings labor, autumn brings harvest and storage, winter brings waiting. Each year repeats the same slow circle, and within it, people learn not only how to survive, but how to stay kind. Honor and law shape much of their days. Customs hold strong, judgments hold stronger. For women especially, the rules weigh heavily. A word misplaced can stain a name, a glance misunderstood can become a story. Yet even under such weight, tenderness finds small openings. The moment when one hand reaches for another in the cold, or when an old blanket is shared without being asked. These quiet mercies are not written into law, but they carry more truth than decrees. The village itself is a web of habit. Each dawn begins with motion, the sound of roosters, the creak of wooden wheels, the steady rhythm of footsteps toward the fields. People plow, sow, and reap by hand. They weave linen from flax, bake bread from coarse grain, mend what breaks and use it again. Nothing is wasted, not food, not effort, not affection. Love must fit into the pattern of labor. It has no separate hour. It lives inside the work, in shared burdens, in silence, in endurance. The world around them is physical, always close. The air smells of soil and smoke. The clothes feel rough but familiar. The hands that touch are calloused but careful. There is little beauty by modern measure, yet the life they build has a quiet grace. A beauty that comes from persistence, from doing the same necessary things with patience. Evenings are brief pauses, not leisure. When the sun sinks, tasks shift rather than end. Someone grinds grain for tomorrow. Someone stirs broth above the embers. Someone patches a tear in a sleeve. The sound of a spindle turning, the hum of a simple tune, the faint laughter of children near the fire. These are the small warmths that hold the darkness back. There are festivals too, though fewer than songs suggest. A wedding, a birth, a good harvest, moments when music returns to the village. Feet stamp, hands clap, wine flows. For a few hours, time loosens. Laughter carries farther than the walls, but even then, joy is quiet, less about celebration than belonging. It is enough to see familiar faces by firelight, to know that life continues in its steady way. The women of the village bear much of its rhythm. They rise first and rest last. They bake, spin, and nurse the sick. Their strength is rarely praised, yet it forms the hidden structure of the world. Men labor in fields, women keep life threaded together. They tend children, animals, elders, and still find time to share small kindnesses, a cup of broth, a few words of comfort, a hand on the shoulder of someone grieving. Their compassion moves quietly, but reaches far. Love in such a world rarely speaks its name. It is not written in letters or carved into stone. It is a look held across a crowded market. It is bread left cooling for someone who will come home late. It is the care taken when lacing another's boots before dawn. It is a rhythm shared rather than declared. There are also losses, and they come often. A season of blight, a harsh winter, a cough that worsens with the frost. People learn early that nothing is guaranteed. Perhaps that is why they hold one another tightly, not in passion, but in understanding. To love here is to endure, to witness another's struggle, to offer warmth when words will not help. When night falls, the cottages glow softly. The air grows still except for the faint crackle of fire. Children sleep under wool, their dreams shaped by the rhythm of chores and seasons. Adults sit quietly, mending nets, sharpening tools, whispering plans. The room smells of smoke, of bread, of the day itself. Outside, frost gathers on the windows, the moon turning every path to silver dust. Inside, time slows until it almost stops. Without perfume or silk, without ceremony or ornament, life becomes simple in its honesty. Affection wears the face of usefulness. To keep someone fed, to share one's blanket, to guard their rest, these are acts of devotion. Each breath shared in the same air becomes a small promise. You are not alone here. There are moments before dawn when everything holds its breath. The fire has burned to embers. The rooster has not yet called. Even the river seems still. In that pause, two people wake briefly. The cold reaches through the blanket, and one hand, almost by instinct, finds another. No words pass between them. They do not need to look. The warmth is enough. It says what language cannot. We are alive, we are together, and that is enough for now. Outside, the first grey light touches the horizon. A thin mist drifts over the fields. Soon there will be movement again. The sound of buckets, of wheels, of voices greeting the day. But for one fragile moment, everything rests in balance. The ache of work still far, the comfort of night not yet gone. It is here, in this balance, that the story of endurance lives. Historians write of kings and crusades, of law and punishment, but the greater history lies here, in the small rooms, in the shared breath of the living. Every gentle act, every quiet mercy is another thread in the vast cloth of time. They do not know they are building history, they only know how to continue. Centuries later, when we imagine them, we see faces lit by firelight. We smell the smoke, the bread, the damp wool. We feel the slow patience of their days. What endures is not power, not wealth, but the way they cared for one another. Through cold, through hunger, through loss. Their tenderness survives like warmth left in old stone. Faint, but still there, a trace of hands that once built, mended, and held. If love is measured by what it sustains, then theirs was great love indeed. It sustained generations, carried families through storms, and left behind a memory of steadiness. They had no songs written for them, no portraits, no letters kept in glass, only this, a world that continued because they refused to stop caring. Even now, if you listen closely in a quiet house, you might hear echoes of them. The scrape of a stool on a dirt floor, the sigh of someone turning in sleep, the faint whisper of cloth drawn closer against the cold. These are not ghosts, but reminders that tenderness once made does not vanish. It lingers in the air, in the way people still reach for one another when the night feels long. So much of history is written in noise, battles, decrees, discoveries. But another kind of history endures in silence, in warmth shared, in the patience of work, in the softness of touch that asks for nothing. That, too, is legacy. That, too, is meaning. As the morning finally arrives, light seeps through the thatch, and the world begins its slow turning once more. The same people rise, the same tasks await, and yet something invisible has been renewed. The kindness of the night lingers in the day, a quiet strength beneath fatigue. In this way, endurance becomes love's truest form, unseen, constant, human. When the story of these centuries is told, their names will be forgotten, their faces lost. But somewhere beneath every monument, beneath every page of record, lies this softer truth, that a hand once found another hand beneath a roof of straw, and that warmth, small, human, enduring, was enough to last the night. Part 2, Origins of Stoicism, the Birth of the Stoa. Under the soft light of the Athenian morning, marble gleams like still water. The city is alive with movement, vendors setting up stalls, students walking toward the agora, the murmur of voices carried by the sea wind. Amid this steady rhythm, a solitary figure walks beneath the long colonnades. His name is Zeno of Citium, a man who once commanded ships, traded goods and trusted fortune. Now, stripped of all possessions by a storm at sea, he begins again with nothing but thought. He listens to the philosophers in the marketplace. They argue beneath open skies, voices of different schools crossing like currents of wind. Zeno does not speak at first. He stands at the edge, listening. He studies the pauses between their sentences, the calm that follows each question. In those silences, something begins to take root, a belief that wisdom is not found in words but in composure. Days turn into weeks, and Zeno becomes a familiar figure among them. He asks quietly what it means to live well. What does it mean to live in accord with nature, when nature itself can destroy a man? He does not seek comfort, only understanding. In time, he begins to teach. Not in a temple, not in the court of kings, but beneath a painted porch, the Stoa Poikile. From this shaded place, open to wind and light, a philosophy receives its name, Stoicism. The students sit in patient rows as the day warms. Zeno speaks without ornament, without grandeur. He tells them that peace is not found in control of events, but in alignment with their flow. Live according to nature, he says. Understand what is yours to govern, your thoughts, your choices, your reactions. Let go of what is not, fortune, opinion, the will of others. The world will move as it must, but peace belongs to those who move with it. The words settle slowly as all simple truths do. They are not meant to inspire, they are meant to endure. In this teaching, there is no promise of reward, no threat of punishment, only balance. Only the steady practice of seeing things as they are, without judgment, without fear. Years pass, the painted porch becomes a place of quiet gathering. Students arrive from across the islands, sailors, merchants, poets, soldiers. They come not to escape the world, but to learn how to remain steady within it. Some stay for months, some for years. The air hums with the faint sound of sandals on stone, of scrolls being opened, of calm voices in conversation. Zeno ages slowly beneath the same blue sky that once witnessed his ruin. Loss has taught him more than wealth ever did. His lessons are shaped not by victory, but by endurance. He speaks of the soul as a calm sea, capable of reflection when still, and chaos when disturbed. He reminds his students that storms will come, but that the sailor who knows himself will never lose direction. After him come others. Cleanthes, a man of great strength, once a boxer, learns through Zeno that restraint is their highest form of power. He writes of endurance, of patience as discipline. His hymns to the order of the cosmos echo across the centuries, a song not of worship, but of harmony. Then Chrysippus, the logician, joins the porch. He brings structure to Zeno's vision, organizing thoughts like stones in a wall. He writes hundreds of scrolls, clear and precise. Through his mind, Stoicism becomes not only a way of living, but a complete system of understanding. He teaches that the universe is one living body, and that reason, the logos, flows through it like breath. To resist that flow is to suffer, to accept it is to be free. Together, these thinkers build not a temple, but a discipline of attention. They ask their followers to look within, to measure emotion without denial or indulgence. Anger, desire, fear, all are natural, but none should rule. The goal is not to feel nothing, but to feel rightly, to let reason guide the heart as the stars guide a ship. The Stoa becomes more than a school. It becomes a refuge from confusion, a place where the mind learns to stand still amid the movement of the world. Merchants come with stories of loss. Soldiers speak of fear, poets of longing, philosophers of doubt. Each leaves with a gentler rhythm. Each learns that wisdom does not demand withdrawal, but presence. Athens continues around them, its noise, its trade, its politics. But within the colonnades, time seems to slow. The marble breathes heat and cool again. The lessons repeat, unchanged, like the turning of seasons or the motion of the sea. Zeno dies as quietly as he lived, his followers continuing the rhythm he began. He leaves no monument, no empire, no shrine, only a way of seeing, a way of standing upright when the world bends, a way of breathing through loss until it becomes calm again. His students keep to the porch, the air filled with the sound of sandals, the rustle of papyrus, and the patient cadence of the teacher's words. The good life is not far away. It is here, in your mind, waiting for you to live it. Top of form. The Roman voices. The words of the Stoa do not remain in Athens. They cross the sea like calm winds carried by merchants, travelers, and soldiers. Each voyage brings them to a new harbor where the language changes, but the wisdom remains. In Rome, the philosophy finds new soil, a world of power, duty, and noise. And yet, amid marble palaces and crowded forums, three voices rise to remind the empire of stillness. The first belongs to Seneca, the statesman. He walks the corridors of influence, advising emperors, debating senators, living in a place where ambition hums louder than conscience. Yet, within that storm, he writes about calm. He speaks of reason as the highest form of strength. He warns that anger, left unguarded, destroys faster than any enemy. In his essays and letters, he speaks not to command but to remind that peace cannot be purchased with power, and that wealth does not quiet the mind. Each evening, he writes by the light of oil lamps. His sentences move like measured breaths. He tells his readers to rise early, to look upon the morning sky before the day's distractions begin. He urges them to live deliberately, to count each day as a complete life, to keep the mind anchored when fortune shifts. Time, he writes, is our most precious possession, and yet it slips away unnoticed. He teaches that virtue lies not in withdrawal, but in clarity, the ability to act rightly even when the world misbehaves. Seneca knows contradiction. He lives among the powerful, serves under emperors who kill without hesitation. He gathers wealth he claims not to need. But his writing is not hypocrisy. It is confession. He writes to balance what power unbalances and to remind himself and others that wisdom is a daily practice, not a state achieved. Through him, Stoicism becomes not just a philosophy for scholars, but a guide for those who must live within the machinery of politics and chance. The second voice is Epictetus, born into slavery, his name meaning acquired. He He owns nothing, not even his freedom, and yet his spirit remains unbroken. When his leg is broken by a master, he does not curse the pain. He accepts it as what is and moves forward with calm determination. Later, when freed, he opens a small school. His classroom is plain, his robe worn thin. He owns no scrolls, no wealth, no furniture. His students sit on the ground, listening as he speaks with the precision of someone who has learned what cannot be taken. He tells them, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Real freedom begins there." His lessons are simple, but their simplicity hides immense depth. When insulted, he says, "Do not be shaken." When praised, do not be proud. When something is lost, remember it was never yours in truth, only lent for a time. He calls the body a vessel, the world a stage, and the self the actor who must play the role given, without complaint, without pretense. To Epictetus, the essence of life lies in perception. Events are neutral, we give them meaning. He reminds his students that the mind is a fortress which no one can breach unless we open the gate. He asks them to begin each day with gratitude, not for what they possess, but for the mere fact of consciousness, the ability to choose how to meet the day. In his humility, Stoicism becomes a philosophy not of privilege, but of dignity, available to anyone who can breathe and think. The third voice is Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by duty, a ruler who carries the weight of millions. He commands armies, governs provinces, and yet in the dim light of his campaign tent, he writes to himself, not to history. His notebook, later called Meditations, is not written for readers. It is a private exercise, a record of one man trying to stay good while power tempts him otherwise. Outside, the soldiers sleep. The wind moves softly through the tents. The empire stretches endlessly beyond the horizon. Marcus writes in silence, his words small, deliberate, and steady. You cannot control events, he notes, only your reactions to them. He reminds himself that anger is weakness, that luxury dulls the mind, that kindness is strength. He tries every night to become less emperor and more human. In his writings there is no grandeur. He calls himself a soul of dust and breath. He marvels that he will soon be forgotten, just as those before him have been. And yet he finds peace in that truth. That impermanence is not loss, but release. He tells himself that to live rightly for even one day is enough to have lived well. Through Marcus, Stoicism becomes an act of introspection. It becomes a mirror, a daily habit of facing one's thoughts honestly and aligning them again toward virtue. He writes, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In this, the emperor and the slave meet in agreement. The same calm conviction runs through both voices, that the outer world may twist and turn, but the inner one can remain steady. Across these three lives, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus, Stoicism adapts, expands, and survives. It becomes not a philosophy of marble halls, but a language of resilience. Its words travel not by conquest, but by usefulness. They offer tools for clarity, remedies for distraction, maps for those lost within themselves. In Rome's age of spectacle and excess, the Stoics remind the world of moderation. They teach that serenity is not indifference, but control in motion. That gentleness is not weakness, but discipline refined. That happiness is not pleasure, but harmony between thought and deed. Empires rise and fall. The words remain. The parchment fades, but the thought endures. That the path to peace does not run through victory or wealth, but through the quiet mastery of the self. To live well, the Stoics say, is to live in alignment with truth, to see the world clearly, and to act with reason, even when reason feels small. Centuries later, their writings still breathe. The Porch of Athens, the School of Epictetus, the Notebook of an Emperor, all whisper the same lesson, that happiness is not an accident of fortune, but a practice of awareness. And so through the Roman voices, the philosophy continues its long, calm journey through time, a steady flame passed from hand to hand, never loud, never hurried, lighting the inner rooms of the mind, teaching generation after generation that the truest empire is the one within. Part 3. Stoicism in the Modern World. Long after the voices of the ancient philosophers fall silent, their words remain, resting quietly beneath the centuries like seeds beneath winter soil. They wait for the right time to bloom again, and they do again and again, each time the world forgets how to be still. In the quiet study rooms of the Renaissance, scholars open the old scrolls and rediscover what was never truly lost. They find not commandments, but practices, ways of seeing, ways of breathing, habits of the soul that guide thought back toward balance. They copy the letters of Seneca, they quote the meditations of Marcus. They teach that wisdom is not about withdrawal, but about participation without being consumed. Philosophy, they realize, is not a theory to admire, but a daily discipline, as simple and essential as steady breath. Centuries pass, the world grows louder, machines, factories, telegraphs, the hum of engines, cities climb higher into the air, and yet the inner life remains the same size. The same old anxieties return in new shapes: fear of loss, the pressure of success, the restless mind that cannot find stillness even in comfort. And so the words of the Stoics rise again. Writers, thinkers, and teachers call them back to life. They appear in books, in speeches, in quiet acts of practice. Focus on what endures, they say. Release what does not. Athletes whisper it before they compete. Control the body, control the breath, let go of the crowd, the noise, the outcome. Leaders remember it before they decide, to see clearly before they act, to separate pride from duty. Psychologists use it to ease the troubled mind, translating ancient advice into modern therapy. The names change, but the wisdom remains the same. The world of glass and steel feels different from marble and sand, yet the human mind has not changed. It still seeks control over the uncontrollable, still wrestles with emotion, still mistakes movement for progress. And so the Stoic words fit perfectly into the modern age, as if written for it. Control the controllable, accept the rest. It sounds simple, but simplicity, when practiced, becomes power. To find peace, not in achievement, but in the quiet steadiness of effort. This is the heart of Stoicism reborn. It is not coldness, though it may seem so from a distance. It is calm, the warmth of composure. It is not detachment, but clarity, the ability to act without drowning in reaction. It is not denial, but acceptance, a gentle recognition that chaos will always come, and that grace is found not in avoiding it, but in how we meet it. In an age of endless motion, Stoicism becomes a pause, a deliberate breath between thought and response, between stimulus and choice. It teaches that calm is not escape, but mastery, that peace is not absence, but awareness. And so even now, in a world brighter, faster, noisier than ever, the old philosophy continues quietly, its words reshaped but its essence unchanged, to live well, to think clearly, to act kindly, and to meet the turning of life with steadiness and grace. Top of Form Part 4, the Roman Baths. Water and ritual. The city of Rome breathes through water. It moves beneath its streets and across its arches like a quiet pulse, steady, unseen, essential. From distant springs and mountain valleys, the aqueducts carry rivers across the land. Stone arches rise in graceful rhythm, one after another, holding the weight of flowing life. The sound of water, faint but constant, becomes part of the city's song, a reminder that even in empire and marble, the simplest element still sustains all things. At dawn, the fountains wake first. They shimmer in courtyards, spill into carved basins, trace silver lines along the marble floors. Each drop catches sunlight and releases it again, a dance between motion and reflection. Rome's wealth is not only its gold, but its water, its ability to harness the earth's veins and shape them into beauty. As the day ripens, footsteps begin to move toward the bathhouses. Men and women walk through the colonnades, carrying towels and flasks of oil. The air grows warmer with each step closer to the steam. The bathhouses are not hidden away. They are the heart of the city's rhythm. Here, the people of Rome gather not only to cleanse the body, but to renew the spirit, to meet, to breathe, to rest. The ritual begins in silence, as all ancient rituals do. Clothes are folded and left behind in the upper diterium, the changing hall where laughter echoes softly against stone. The air smells faintly of olive oil and heat. Attendants move quietly, guiding visitors toward the next room. The tepidarium, a chamber of gentle warmth. Inside, the light is soft and diffused through the mist. The marble glows pale gold. The air presses gently against the skin, loosening the muscles, washing away the dust and fatigue of the day. Here, people linger. They talk in low voices, their sentences breaking into small clouds of steam. The sound of dripping water becomes a kind of music. It is not a place for hurry. Every step is deliberate, every motion part of the ceremony of renewal. From there, the path continues into the caldarium, the chamber of deep heat. The floor trembles faintly from the fires burning beneath it, part of the hypocaust system that warms the air through hidden channels. The walls themselves glow with warmth, breathing heat into the skin. Bronze basins filled with hot water gleam in the shadows. Here, sweat gathers on the body like a second skin, and with it, the tension of work and time begins to release. Breath slows, the heart finds a steadier rhythm. The city's noise, the carts, the voices, the endless movement, fades behind thick doors. In the heat, thought grows simpler. There is no past, no duty, no ambition, only the pulse of the blood and the sound of one's own breathing. This is not indulgence, it is restoration, the meeting of body and element, the oldest form of medicine. Water moves from heat to cool, from cool to calm, each transition a lesson in balance. The Romans understand that cleansing is more than washing away dirt. It is a slow untying of the knots that life creates. Every drop of water carries away a fragment of restlessness. Every breath taken in the mist feels like a small return to peace. In one corner of the room, a physician walks quietly among the pools. He carries a small pouch of herbs and a polished bronze mirror. He does not prescribe in haste. Instead, he observes the posture, the skin, the breath. He recommends warmth for stiffness, coolness for inflammation, silence for the weary mind. To him, the bath itself is medicine, and the medicine is patience. Oil is poured over the body and scraped gently away with curved tools of metal called strigils. The motion is rhythmic, circular, unhurried. The skin glows faintly under the lamplight. Afterward, attendants bring small cups of water or wine diluted with herbs. People sit along the edges of the pools, their conversations calm, their laughter subdued, as though the air itself asks for quiet. Beyond the caldarium lies the frigidarium, a chamber of cool marble and clear water. Here, the heat gives way to renewal. People step in slowly, gasping as the cold embraces them. The shock awakens the senses, seals the pores, resets the pulse. Some close their eyes and float, their bodies weightless in the stillness of the pool. Light ripples along the ceiling. For a moment, everything seems suspended. Sound, motion, time. This is the rhythm of Roman life, from heat to cold, from tension to release, from the noise of the city to the quiet beneath the arches. It is a ritual that holds both simplicity and grandeur. The poor and the rich, the soldier and the scholar, all find equal ground here in the warmth of water. In this space, hierarchy dissolves. Every person becomes a body, a creature of breath, muscle, and calm. Outside, the city continues its endless rhythm, markets, temples, processions, debates. But within the baths, there is only stillness. The marble reflects the flicker of lamplight. The sound of dripping water marks the passage of minutes like a soft clock. Time itself seems to float. Each day, Rome renews itself in this way, not with ceremony, but with consistency. The baths are not luxury, they are necessity, a kind of discipline disguised as pleasure. Through water, the Romans learn something essential, that care for the body is care for the mind, and that purification is not only physical, but emotional, even spiritual. When the sun begins to set, the bathers dress again, their movements slower now, measured by calm. The city feels gentler, its weight softened by warmth and steam. The scent of oil lingers on the skin, the sound of water still hums in the ears. They step back into the streets, carrying with them a quiet the city itself seems to borrow from the baths. And as night falls over the rooftops, Rome glows not only with torchlight, but with the subtle radiance of millions of hearts and bodies at rest, each one cleansed, each one balanced, each one reminded of what it means to simply exist. The aqueducts continue their flow through the darkness, the water moving as it always has, softly, endlessly, a river that teaches the same lesson every day, that movement and stillness are not opposites, but partners in the same rhythm of life. The architecture of calm. The Roman baths were not a symbol of indulgence, they were a way of life, a structure built around renewal. Here, people met without hierarchy. Merchants spoke with soldiers, scholars with farmers. In the warmth of water and air, all distinctions softened. Steam rose through the halls like a silent equalizer. Within those marble chambers, everyone belonged to the same rhythm, the rhythm of breath, of heat, of human quiet. The architecture itself seemed to breathe. It was designed not only for function, but for calm. Domes curved like the lungs of the building. Their rounded shapes held sound gently, turning voices into echoes that never shouted. Columns lifted the eyes upward toward light, reminding the body to stand a little straighter, to expand, to inhale. Mosaics shimmered beneath the pools, tiny fragments of glass and stone arranged into scenes of rivers, dolphins, and gods. Each tile caught the light differently, so that the water seemed alive, as if the baths themselves were dreaming. The air smelled faintly of oil and mint. Bronze basins reflected soft glimmers of flame. Attendants walked slowly through the vapor, their movements unhurried, their gestures smooth. This was not a place of rush, but of ritual. Every act, pouring water, folding a towel, stepping from warm to cool, was deliberate. Time stretched. The bath was not a task to complete, it was a rhythm to inhabit. When the heat had done its work, the body moved toward the frigidarium, the cool room. Here, water lay still and clear as glass. Marble walls held the cold, and the shock of immersion brought clarity. People descended slowly, their breath catching for a moment before it steadied again. The transition was the lesson that balance requires contrast, that renewal often follows surrender. The cold sealed the pause, the heart quickened, and when they rose from the water, they carried a lightness no words could explain. The baths were living temples to equilibrium. They embodied the Roman understanding that health was not only the absence of illness, but the presence of harmony. Here, conversation mingled with silence. Business met reflection. The body and the city shared one pulse. Every drop of water seemed to echo the empire's faith in structure, in rhythm, in order. As the centuries turned, the empire began to weaken. The aqueducts that once brought life across the land fell quiet. The marble cracked and the halls grew empty. Steam no longer rose from the caldarium. The laughter faded from the apoditerium. But the idea remained. It lived on in memory, in practice, in instinct. The notion that warmth heals, that water restores, that time given to the body is time returned to the mind. Even when the great bathhouses fell to ruin, their spirit did not disappear. It flowed quietly into new forms, the hammams of the East, the mineral springs of the Alps, the still pools of spas and sanctuaries across the world. Each carried the same inheritance, the understanding that cleansing is not only of the skin but of the spirit that carries fatigue. You can still find their echo today, in the sound of a shower after long labor, in the warmth that spreads across the back beneath falling water, in the exhale that comes without thought, when the body remembers what it means to let go. Every time a person stands beneath water and closes their eyes, they join that lineage, a quiet continuation of the Roman rhythm. The bath, ancient or modern, is an architecture of calm. It does not demand belief. It asks only for presence, a surrender to the simplest elements: heat, cold, rest, renewal. To step into water is to step out of time, to leave behind the noise of the world for a moment of stillness. And when you emerge, you carry with you something that cannot be bought or stored. A softness, a clarity, a reminder that care is not luxury, but continuity. The Romans understood this without needing to explain it. Their marble pools, their arches, their domes. They were all part of a single sentence written in stone that life, like water, must move, but it must also pause. That strength is born not from constant motion, but from rhythm, the alternation between effort and ease. Now, centuries later, the aqueducts are silent, but the message still flows. It moves through pipes, through showers, through fountains, through the small rituals of daily life. Each act of care, each moment of cleansing is an echo of that ancient wisdom, that stillness and renewal belong to the same language of peace. And somewhere, in the memory of water, Rome still breathes, not in empire, but in rhythm, not in conquest, but in calm. Bottom of form. Bottom of form. Part 5. Ancient Egyptian Medicine. The river and the healers. Along the Nile, the river glides like glass beneath the rising sun. Its surface reflects the sky in slow motion, soft and golden. The air smells faintly of mud and lotus, of life renewed each morning by the steady breathing of water. Villages rise along its banks, houses made of mud brick, palm and reed, their walls still cool from the night. The river is not only their road, but their calendar, their medicine, their memory. It feeds their crops, fills their lungs, shapes their days. Healing begins here, beside the current. Physicians move through narrow paths between the fields and the homes. Their baskets sway at their sides, filled with jars and folded cloth. They carry honey and oil, myrrh and resin, garlic, onion and salt, the tools of a knowledge passed quietly from one hand to the next. They walk with patience, their steps slow enough to notice the color of the light, the scent of the air, the small details that reveal a change in health. Each village knows them by name. They are not figures of mystery or power, but part of the rhythm of daily life, as ordinary and as necessary as the harvest. When they arrive, they work without haste. A wound is washed with water drawn fresh from the river, then covered with a layer of honey, whose sweetness keeps away decay. A cough is eased with oil warmed in the hand, rubbed into the chest with quiet circles. Pain in the joints is soothed with poultices made of herbs, mixed with fat or clay, wrapped in linen, left to draw the heat outward. The healer watches and listens. They study the body by sight and touch, feeling for swelling, tracing the pulse with 2 fingers, measuring breath the way one reads a tide. They look into the eyes, marking their clarity or cloud. They listen for the rhythm of sleep, for the tone of the voice, for the signs that speak without words. Nothing in their practice is hidden behind walls. Healing takes place in open air, on mats woven from reeds, beneath the shadow of a palm. Children watch as herbs are ground into powder. Neighbors bring cloth or hold a hand still. The act of care belongs to the community. It is both skill and presence, a reminder that to be healed is to be seen. Beside the healers lie scrolls of papyrus, their surfaces covered with neat lines of writing, ink the color of river silt. Each scroll is a collection of memory, notes, observations, patterns noticed and refined over time. They describe the human body in quiet detail, how fever comes and goes, how swelling follows injury, how rest restores. Each line is an attempt to understand the balance between body and world. The language is simple, but the wisdom runs deep. There is no division between medicine and nature, between experiment and experience. Hundreds of remedies fill those fragile pages. For fever, a paste of willow and water. For infection, cedar and resin. For pain, a poultice of crushed herbs mixed with honey. For wounds, a bandage soaked in salt to cleanse and preserve. Even the simplest materials, sand to dry, oil to soften, water to cool, are used with precision. Every cure is drawn from the earth, every lesson shaped by touch and time. To the healers of the Nile, disease is not an enemy to destroy. It is an imbalance to correct, a sign that the rhythm between body and nature has faltered. They work to restore that rhythm, not through violence or force, but through understanding. When the body aches, it asks for patience. When the body burns, it asks for coolness. When the body weakens, it asks for rest. Each symptom is a message, and each treatment is an answer, spoken in the language of care. At sunset, when their work is done, the healers wash their hands in the river. The water, still warm from the day, runs golden between their fingers. They do not call themselves miracle workers. They are listeners. To the body, to the land, to the quiet voice that lives between them. They trust what they can observe and accept what remains unknown. The river carries away the traces of their labor, just as it carries the silt that will feed next season's fields. In this way, healing is part of the same endless motion: birth, growth, decay, renewal. It is not a conquest of nature, but a conversation with it. The healer's tools, the herbs, the honey, the oil, are the river's own gifts returned to service. Each cure begins and ends with water. Each life in turn returns to it. And so, as the light fades and the river turns silver beneath the moon, the people of the Nile rest, knowing that their bodies, like the current, belong to a larger rhythm, a balance that can be disturbed but always seeks to mend itself. A quiet flow that continues from land to water, from body to breath, from one generation to the next. Top of form, the art of touch. In small clay rooms near the river, the air is thick with warmth and silence. Bronze tools rest on smooth stone tables, their surfaces catching the dim light. The surgeons move slowly with a precision born of habit. There is no metal noise, no clatter, only breath, water, and the soft scrape of cloth. They cut with care. They wash with wine to cleanse the wound. They stitch with linen thread drawn from the same flax that clothes their families. Each movement is measured, deliberate, and calm. There is no sense of hurry, no chaos of command. Healing, for them, is a form of worship, not of gods, but of skill itself. The bronze glints faintly as it meets the skin. Hands do not tremble, they follow what they know. They have seen injuries from tools, from animals, from labor. They have treated the broken and the burned. They know that pain is part of life and that every act of mending must also contain gentleness. Some patients live, some do not. The outcome is uncertain, but the devotion remains unbroken. Each life is approached with the same calm courage, the same belief that effort is a kind of faith. To these healers, success is not victory over death, but the grace of care offered in its shadow. The rhythm of the work never changes. They move from one bed to another, washing, dressing, stitching, and observing. Their knowledge grows not from theory, but from touch. The texture of the skin, the warmth of the body, the pulse beneath the wrist. They understand what the eyes alone cannot see. Touch tells them what words cannot describe. Outside, the river glides as if keeping time with their movements. Inside, oil lamps flicker, their flames small but steady. The smell of herbs, of copper and wine fills the space. There is a deep humility in the act, a recognition that the human form, though fragile, is also resilient. They do not seek to master it, only to understand and to tend. In another room, midwives work by lamplight. They too rely on the knowledge of touch and instinct. Their voices are low, their presence grounding. Oil glistens on their hands, used to ease and comfort, not to command. They listen to the rhythm of the mother's breathing, to the slow rise and fall of her chest. They whisper encouragement, words meant to guide, not to instruct. Birth, like the river, moves at its own pace. It cannot be forced or rushed. The midwives know this. They follow the body's language rather than imposing their own. A child's first cry pierces the air. Thin at first, then full, alive. The sound spreads warmth through the room, as if the very walls exhale. Women rest afterward on woven mats, their bodies held in stillness, their faces calm despite exhaustion. The midwives move softly between them, checking breath, warmth, and pulse, their hands carrying both strength and gentleness. They know how to soothe pain with touch alone, how to speak with silence when words would disturb the peace. In these rooms, healing is both courage and craft. It is not the conquest of weakness, but the nurturing of balance. Every birth, every wound, every recovery is a lesson in patience. The healers do not separate body from spirit or work from reverence. Each act of care honors the fragile line between suffering and survival. The river outside reflects this same rhythm. Its flow is steady, generous, unhurried. It teaches without speech, to move forward without resistance, to yield without surrender. The healers, the midwives, the patients, all a part of this same movement, each breath another ripple in the long story of the Nile. In time, night returns. The lamps burn lower. The tools are cleaned and placed back in their order. The surgeons wash their hands in bowls of cool water. The midwives rest their eyes and listen to the river's distant sound. The day has ended, but the rhythm remains. Tomorrow more wounds will open, more children will arrive, more hands will reach to mend and comfort. And through it all, the same truth endures, that the act of healing is not domination, but devotion. The body is not a problem to be solved, but a vessel to be tended, fragile and enduring all at once. To mend it is to honor life itself, to take part in the quiet covenant between flesh and earth. The river and the healers share one lesson, that patience is strength and that gentleness, when practiced long enough, becomes a form of power. The rhythm of their hands, the rhythm of the current, both speak the same language, steady, generous, never rushing. Top of form, bottom of form. Closing, narration. And now the long journey of time grows still. The voices of the healers, the philosophers, the poets, they fade gently, like ripples meeting the shore. What remains is quiet, a thread of warmth that runs through every age, from the fire-lit rooms of the past to the silent spaces of tonight. The river still moves, though we no longer see it. The same sun that touched the stones of Rome still finds its way through the window, soft and patient. What once was ritual has become memory, a slower way of living, a softer way of being. Perhaps the art of healing was never only about the body, but about the rhythm of care, the calm of attention, the courage to pause. Every breath, every gentle act is part of that same lineage, the oldest medicine in the world. So rest now. Let the noise fall away. The night holds you as it once held them, steadily, quietly, without demand. The centuries pass, but peace remains. And in that peace you may breathe and sleep, bottom of form.